Getting rich is simple. Staying broke rarely happens by accident. It happens in small steps, repeated quietly, for years, without ever being named. Most people are not failing to build wealth. They are actively building its opposite, one reasonable-looking decision at a time. Machiavelli understood this about power long before anyone applied it to money. He warned that a prince rarely falls from one dramatic mistake. He falls from 100 small ones, none of them alarming enough on their own to notice. Wealth obeys the exact same law. This is not a list of things to do. This is a list of things to stop doing, immediately, before they cost you another decade. 7 traps, each one disguised as something ordinary, even responsible. Each one common enough that you have probably already stepped into at least one of them this year. Listen carefully, because avoiding these 7 traps will do more for your future net worth than almost any single strategy you could ever go looking for instead. Every trap on this list shares one quality that makes it dangerous. It never announces itself as a trap. It arrives wearing the language of comfort, responsibility, or good sense, and by the time the cost becomes visible, years have usually already been spent inside it. Machiavelli never trusted appearances, and neither should you, especially when the appearance in question is your own financial life quietly reassuring you that everything is fine. Go through these 7 honestly. Some of them will not apply to you. At least one of them almost certainly does. Trap number 1. Never sell an hour without knowing its ceiling. Time is the only resource on this entire list that cannot be recovered once it is spent. Money can be lost and earned again. Reputation can be damaged and rebuilt. An hour handed over today is gone permanently, and no later success ever buys it back. The trap is not working for money. The trap is working for money inside an arrangement that places a hard ceiling on what an hour of your life can ever be worth, while placing no ceiling at all on how many hours you are expected to give. Picture 2 young professionals starting on the same day, doing work that looks, from the outside, nearly identical. The first accepts a role where every additional hour of effort produces the exact same hourly return as the one before it, forever, no matter how much skill accumulates or how much value gets created along the way. The second accepts a smaller starting arrangement, but one tied to a share of what actually gets built, a piece of the outcome, a commission structure with no cap, a stake in something that can grow independent of the hours poured into it. 10 years later, the first professional has become extremely good at a job that still pays by the hour, and the ceiling has followed them the entire way, rising slightly with seniority, but never actually lifting. The second professional's hours have long since stopped being the thing that determines their income. What they built now earns whether they are personally present for it or not. The mechanism here is not about hard work. Both professionals in that example worked hard. The mechanism is about where the ceiling sits, and whether your income is structurally allowed to outgrow the specific hours you personally supply. A wage, no matter how generous, is still an hour sold at a fixed and predictable rate. An asset, a stake, a share of an outcome, has no such fixed rate attached to it, and that single structural difference is the entire distance between working for decades and eventually being worked for. This does not mean every job is a trap, or that a paycheck is beneath you while you build something better. Most people rightly start by trading hours for money, and there is no shame in it. The trap is never noticing that this is what you are doing, and never asking, at any point along the way, what ceiling currently sits above your effort, and what it would actually take to remove it. Time spent without ever asking that question is time spent at a rate someone else decided on your behalf, and they were never going to volunteer to raise it for you. Ask yourself plainly, if you worked twice as hard next year, would your income actually reflect it? Or would it simply mean you gave away twice the hours for the same rate someone else set long before you arrived? A ruler who cannot answer where his own limits come from is not really ruling anything. Neither is an income that cannot explain its own ceiling. Once you understand that your hours have a hidden price cap on them, the next trap becomes obvious, because it is the exact same mistake, made with borrowed money instead of borrowed time. Trap number 2. Never let debt outlive the thing it bought. Debt itself is neutral. It is simply money borrowed from your future self and handed to your present self on the condition that it eventually gets paid back, usually with interest attached as the price of the convenience. The trap has nothing to do with debt existing. The trap is debt that finances something losing value every single day, while the debt itself keeps compounding in the opposite direction, so that the gap between what you owe and what you actually have left keeps widening for years after the original decision was made. Consider two people who each borrow a similar amount of money in the same year. The first uses it to finance a lifestyle upgrade, a newer vehicle, a larger television, a vacation charged directly to a card carrying real interest. Within a few years, the vehicle has lost a significant share of its value. The television is outdated, the vacation exists only as a memory, and the debt used to buy all three is not only still present but has grown, quietly. Every month it went unpaid in full. The second person borrows a comparable amount to acquire something that produces income or appreciates over time. A small stake in a business, a piece of property, equipment that increases their own output. Years later, the first person is still paying for things that no longer exist in any meaningful form. The second person is holding something that is worth more than the debt used to acquire it, and in many cases, the asset itself is now paying the debt down on their behalf. The mechanism is simple, and almost nobody states it plainly. Debt should always be measured against the trajectory of whatever it purchased, not against the size of the monthly payment alone. A payment can feel manageable for years while the underlying asset quietly loses value the entire time, which means the real cost of that debt is not the interest rate printed on the paperwork. It is the growing distance between a debt that stays flat or grows and an asset that shrinks towards zero underneath it. Two debts of identical size and identical interest rate can be entirely different decisions because one is anchored to something appreciating and the other is anchored to nothing at all once the object itself is gone. This is not an argument for avoiding debt altogether, and Machiavelli would have had little patience for a strategy built entirely on fear. Debt aimed at something that grows is leverage. Debt aimed at something that shrinks is simply borrowed poverty, arriving later than expected and dressed up as a normal monthly bill in the meantime. The difference is decided at the moment the debt is taken on, never later, because by the time the asset has finished depreciating, the decision has already been made and the debt remains regardless of how anyone feels about it in hindsight. Before signing anything, ask one blunt question. In 5 years, will this debt be smaller than the thing it bought or larger? If the honest answer is larger, you are not financing a purchase. You are financing a slow leak, and slow leaks are far more expensive over a decade than a single visible loss ever is. Once debt is understood this way, the next trap becomes easier to see because it involves borrowing something even more dangerous than money: someone else's opinion about your own future. Trap number 3. Never take directions from someone standing still. Advice is rarely wrong on its own terms. It is usually perfectly correct for the life of the person giving it, which is precisely what makes it dangerous when applied to a different life heading somewhere entirely different. The trap is not bad advice. The trap is good advice, sincerely offered from someone who has never actually been where you are trying to go and has no real way of knowing what that destination requires. Picture someone with a genuine, specific ambition, surrounded by well-meaning people who have never pursued anything similar themselves. Every one of them offers advice rooted in caution, because caution is the only strategy anyone can offer confidently about a path they have never walked. One version of this person absorbs the caution completely, treats it as wisdom simply because it was offered with love and repeated often enough, and slowly narrows their own ambition down to match what feels safe to the people around them. Another version of this person listens politely, weighs the source, and quietly seeks out different counsel entirely. People who have actually built the specific thing being attempted, even if that means fewer voices and less immediate comfort. Years later, the first person has a life that closely resembles the advice they were given. The second person has a life that closely resembles the goal they were actually chasing because they finally started asking people who had already arrived there. The mechanism is not that well-meaning people are foolish or malicious. It is that advice is always, whether the giver realizes it or not, a description of the giver's own map. Someone who has never taken a specific risk cannot accurately describe what that risk costs or what it returns, no matter how confidently the advice is delivered. Someone who has never built ownership cannot meaningfully advise you on ownership, only on the safety of not attempting it. The advice is not lying to you. It is simply describing a country the advisor has never actually visited, using a map drawn entirely from a different one. This does not mean cutting off everyone who has not achieved exactly what you want. It means weighting advice by proximity to the actual destination, not by how much someone loves you or how confidently they speak. A person can be entirely trustworthy, entirely well-intentioned, and still be the wrong person to ask about a specific move, simply because they have never made it themselves and have no real data to offer, only fear dressed up as concern. Before accepting guidance on any major decision, ask a simple question nobody teaches you to ask out loud. Has this person actually done the specific thing I am trying to do, or are they only describing what they would do if they were braver than they turned out to be? The answer changes everything about how much weight that advice deserves. Advice from people standing still keeps you standing still beside them, out of loyalty rather than logic. And loyalty to the wrong compass is exactly how the next trap manages to look like stability instead of the cage it actually is. Trap number 4. Refuse the salary built to keep you from leaving. Some jobs pay too little to stay in. Those are not the dangerous ones, because the discomfort itself eventually forces a decision. The genuinely dangerous job pays exactly enough. Enough to cover the bills, enough for a comfortable routine, enough that leaving would mean a real, visible step backward for a period of time, but never quite enough to build the independent wealth that would make leaving unnecessary in the first place. That precise calibration is not always intentional on the part of any single employer, but the effect is identical either way. An income engineered, whether by design or by accident, to keep you exactly where you are. Consider 2 employees earning a similar, comfortable salary at similar companies. The first spends that comfort the way comfort is designed to be spent. A nicer apartment, a nicer car, a lifestyle that expands to match the paycheck almost exactly, leaving little margin at the end of any given month. The second earns the same amount, but deliberately keeps their lifestyle well below what the salary could support, redirecting the difference toward building something that does not depend on that specific employer continuing to exist. 5 years later, the first employee is earning more than before, but is, if anything, more trapped than at the start, because the lifestyle built around the salary has grown to match it precisely. The second employee could re-sign tomorrow and continue functioning, because an entire second income stream has been quietly compounding in the background the whole time. The mechanism is not the salary itself. It is the width of the gap between what comes in and what is required to survive. A wide gap is freedom, whether the salary is modest or generous. A narrow gap is a leash, no matter how comfortable the leash happens to feel on any given day. Employers rarely need to trap anyone deliberately, because most people trap themselves the moment their spending rises to match their income exactly, closing the very gap that would have eventually let them leave on their own terms. This is not a case against a stable job, a steady paycheck, or the genuine comfort a good salary provides. It is a case against confusing that comfort with actual freedom, and against ever letting a lifestyle expand precisely as fast as the income funding it. The wealthy are rarely people who earn dramatically more than everyone around them. They are, disproportionately, people who kept the gap between income and spending wide enough, long enough, for something else to grow inside it. Ask honestly. If this specific paycheck stopped arriving next month, how many months could you actually continue as you are right now? If the answer is uncomfortably short, the job is not paying you enough to stay. It is paying you exactly enough to never leave, and those are 2 very different arrangements wearing the same number on a pay stub. Comfort that cannot survive its own removal was never really freedom. It was simply a well-decorated version of staying in place, and staying in place is precisely what the next trap disguises as productivity. Trap number 5. Never mistake motion for movement. Motion is activity. Movement is activity that actually goes somewhere. The two feel identical from the inside, which is exactly what makes this trap so easy to fall into for years without noticing. A full calendar, a long list of tasks completed, a genuine sense of being busy every single day, none of which guarantees that any of it is carrying you toward the specific outcome you actually claim to want. Picture two people who each work equally hard across an entire year, by any honest measure of hours logged and effort exerted. The first fills every day with tasks that feel urgent in the moment, answering messages instantly, attending every meeting offered, reorganizing systems that already worked, taking on favors and small obligations that each individually seem reasonable to accept. The second works just as many hours, but spends real time before each week deciding which few actions would actually move their specific goal forward, and declines almost everything else, even when declining feels unproductive or mildly rude in the moment. At the end of the year, the first person is exhausted and can point to an enormous volume of completed activity, almost none of which changed their underlying position. The second person completed far fewer tasks overall and is measurably closer to the actual goal, because every task that made the list was chosen for its direction, not merely for its urgency. The mechanism here is that busyness is comfortable in a way that real progress often is not. A full task list produces an immediate, reliable sense of accomplishment, available on demand every single day, regardless of whether any of it matters a year from now. Genuine movement toward a difficult goal, by contrast, often looks quiet from the outside. Fewer visible tasks, longer stretches spent thinking or building something that will not pay off for months. Motion is chosen constantly, by almost everyone, precisely because it feels better in the short term than movement does, even when movement is the only one of the two actually worth anything in the long term. This is not an argument for working less. It is an argument for auditing what all that work is actually pointed at, on a schedule, rather than assuming that effort and progress are the same thing simply because they share so many of the same physical hours. A wheel can spin at extraordinary speed and cover no ground at all if it is not touching anything solid. Most busy, exhausted people are not lazy. They are, quite literally, spinning. Ask yourself, honestly, at the end of any demanding week, did this week move me measurably closer to the specific thing I say I want, or did it simply keep me occupied while that thing stayed exactly as far away as it was 7 days ago? Busy and stuck can coexist for years, and often do, precisely because busyness disguises stagnation so effectively that even the person living it rarely notices until much later than they would like. Once movement is separated from motion, the next trap becomes far easier to spot because it is the opposite failure, a moment that looks like real movement, arriving suddenly, promising a shortcut past everything discussed so far. Trap number 6. Distrust the deal you cannot bear to lose. Genuine opportunity almost always comes with real friction attached. Some diligence required, some risk clearly disclosed, some patience demanded before any return arrives. The trap is the opposite kind of offer entirely, the one engineered to feel urgent and effortless at exactly the same time, structured so that hesitating even briefly feels like the real risk rather than the offer itself. Consider two people, each presented with an opportunity to invest a meaningful sum of money. The first opportunity comes from a source willing to answer every hard question slowly and in detail, comfortable with the buyer walking away to think it over, unbothered by a delay of days or even weeks before a decision. The second opportunity arrives wrapped in urgency, a limited window, a story of other people already moving fast, a subtle discomfort deliberately attached to the idea of pausing to verify anything before committing. One person who takes the first opportunity after real diligence ends up in a fair arrangement whether it ultimately succeeds or fails, because the terms were genuinely examined before agreeing to them. One person who takes the second opportunity, seduced by the engineered urgency, frequently discovers only afterward that the ease of saying yes was the entire point, deliberately designed to prevent the ordinary scrutiny that would have caught the problem in advance. The mechanism exploited here is loss aversion, and it is one of the oldest tools of persuasion that exists, older even than Machiavelli's own century, though he understood its use in political flattery just as clearly as any modern seller understands its use in a pitch. A deal engineered to feel like it is about to disappear forever activates fear faster than it activates judgment, and fear is a notoriously poor negotiator on your behalf. The easier and more urgent an offer feels deliberately and specifically, the more scrutiny it has actually earned, not less, because legitimate opportunity rarely needs to manufacture panic in order to be taken seriously. This does not mean every fast-moving opportunity is a scam or that real windows never genuinely close. It means the specific feeling of not being able to bear walking away is itself diagnostic information, and it should trigger more caution, not less. A deal built on real value can usually survive a week of real questions. A deal that cannot survive a week of real questions was very likely built on something other than real value in the first place, and the urgency exists specifically to prevent that week from ever happening. Before committing to anything consequential, ask a deliberately unhurried question. Would this exact opportunity still exist on the exact same terms a week from now after I have actually checked everything worth checking? If the honest answer is no, the deal was never really about the opportunity itself. It was about the clock attached to it, and clocks like that are rarely placed there by accident. Learning to walk away from what feels irresistible is one discipline. The final trap on this list is almost the opposite problem entirely, and it is just as costly. Learning to eventually stop walking away from everything at all. Trap number 7. Never let patience curdle into paralysis. Patience is a genuine virtue in building wealth, and nearly every trap already covered on this list rewards exactly that kind of patience. The willingness to wait for the right opportunity, the right terms, the right moment to commit fully. But patience has a quiet failure mode that almost never gets named directly, because it wears the same clothing as wisdom the entire time it is happening. At some point, careful waiting stops being a strategy and starts being a hiding place, and the person inside it is often the last one to notice the difference. Picture two people who each identify a genuinely promising opportunity at roughly the same time, and each decide, reasonably, to wait for more certainty before committing fully. The first person sets a real deadline for that waiting period, gathers the specific information that would actually resolve the uncertainty, and commits once that information arrives, whatever it turns out to say. The second person also waits, but never actually defines what would satisfy the waiting, and so the waiting simply continues, quietly, for another year, and then another, always one piece of information short of finally being ready, no matter how much information eventually arrives. 2 years later, the first person has either succeeded, failed, or adjusted, and either way has real data and real forward motion to show for the wait. The second person is still waiting, in exactly the same position as 2 years earlier, having convinced themselves the entire time that this was caution, rather than what it actually became somewhere along the way. The mechanism is that caution, unlike most other failures, feels virtuous the entire time it is happening, which makes it uniquely difficult to catch in yourself. Overspending feels bad in the moment. Reckless risk feels bad in the moment. Endless careful waiting feels responsible in the moment, right up until years have passed, and the responsible feeling has cost exactly as much, in real terms, as any of the more obviously reckless mistakes already covered on this list. Machiavelli warned that a prince who waits for the perfect moment to act often waits until the moment has already passed him by entirely, and the same warning applies just as precisely to a bank account. This is not an argument against genuine patience, which remains one of the most valuable qualities anyone building real wealth can possess. It is an argument for patience with a defined edge to it. A real deadline, a specific piece of information that would resolve the uncertainty, a plan for what happens once that information arrives either way. Patience without an edge is not a strategy. It is simply fear, given a more respectable name, and allowed to run indefinitely without ever being asked to justify itself. Ask yourself plainly, is there a specific condition that would end this particular waiting period, or has the waiting itself quietly become the entire plan? If you cannot answer that question clearly, patience has already curdled into paralysis, whether or not it still feels, from the inside, like careful discipline. 7 traps, none of them loud, none of them dramatic. And that is exactly why each one manages to cost so much before it is ever noticed. Selling hours with no ceiling, debt that outlives what it bought, advice from people standing still, a salary calibrated to keep you exactly where you are, motion mistaken for movement, a deal too urgent to question, patience allowed to curdle into paralysis. Every one of them wears the disguise of something ordinary, responsible, even safe. And every one of them quietly guarantees the same outcome if left unchecked long enough. Machiavelli never promised safety to anyone. He promised that the ones who saw clearly, who named the trap before stepping into it, were the ones who kept their power while everyone else quietly lost theirs without ever understanding why. Wealth follows the same rule exactly. It is rarely destroyed in one dramatic moment. It is avoided, slowly, one reasonable-looking trap at a time, by people who never learned to name what was actually happening to them. Go back through this list once more, honestly, and find the one trap that already describes your life right now. Not the one that sounds the most dramatic, the one that is quietly, currently true. If this changed the way you see the traps standing between you and real wealth, then do not stop here, because what you have heard in this video is only the surface. There are deeper layers to psychology, influence, and wealth that simply cannot be explored fully in one video. Not because they do not exist, but because most people are not ready to hear them. That is why most stay average. If you are not one of them, then subscribe, because every video here is designed to sharpen your mindset, increase your value, and separate you from the crowd. No fluff, no noise, just strategy. Most people will watch this and move on. A few will stay and change. Decide which one you are.